The sun was setting over Washington, D.C., casting an amber glow across the White House lawn. Inside the Oval Office, former President Donald J. Trump sat in his signature navy suit, arms folded, his eyes locked on the flickering screen of a breaking news alert. The headline read, "President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso delivers 24-hour ultimatum to Donald Trump. Withdraw or face consequences." The room tensed with silence. 24 hours, Trump muttered under his breath, tapping a finger on the desk. He thinks I blink in 24 hours? The story had erupted like wildfire. Ibrahim Traoré, the young military leader turned president of Burkina Faso, had gone live on international television just hours before, staring directly into the camera with unshaken resolve. He accused Trump of interfering in African affairs, economically, diplomatically, even digitally. According to Traoré, the former U.S. president had covertly backed opposition movements and tech leaks that destabilized the region. "You have 24 hours, Mr. Trump," Traoré had declared in a chilling tone, his green military uniform catching the studio light. "Withdraw your operatives. Remove your influence, or I will make you a global example of what it means to underestimate Africa." Media outlets across the globe exploded. CNN called it an unprecedented call-out. Fox News labeled it a dangerous bluff. But social media? Social media went wild. Memes, hashtags, debates, even countdown timers filled timelines. $ Trump versus Traoré, $ 24-hour standoff, $ Trump clapback incoming. In the war room adjacent to the Oval Office, a team of loyal Trump strategists huddled around a table, whispering rapid updates. Some were rattled. This wasn't just diplomacy gone tense. It was a public challenge to Trump's legacy, his power, and his pride. But Trump? He wasn't shaken. In fact, he was smiling now. He stood up, slowly, walking toward the window, the orange hue of the setting sun hitting the side of his face like a spotlight before a performance. "If Traoré wants to see what 24 hours means in my world," he said to no one in particular, "then I'll give him a reminder of what American resolve really looks like." He turned to his aide. "Get me on the air, prime time." Outside, the night was falling, but inside that room, something much bigger was rising. The countdown had begun. The digital clock in the CNN newsroom blinked 00:16:38, just under 8 hours remaining in Ibrahim Traoré's ultimatum. Then it happened. Every major broadcast in America, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, even BBC and Al Jazeera, suddenly cut to a flashing breaking banner. The screen shifted to a live feed. It wasn't just the U.S. tuning in now. The whole world froze. Donald J. Trump stood alone at a darkened podium, draped with the American flag. No audience, no applause, just silence. The camera panned slowly, revealing the backdrop, a massive projection of Traoré's speech from earlier that day. Trump began, "To President Ibrahim Traoré, you've made a grave miscalculation. You think you can threaten a former president of the United States? On live television? You think you can draw lines and expect me to kneel? You're wrong. So wrong, it's actually kind of embarrassing." His voice was calm, but heavy, like a coiled storm. "You say I've interfered, but the truth is this. America doesn't interfere. We influence. We lead. We protect what matters. And if I ever took interest in your backyard, it's because there were cries for help you couldn't hear. The world held its breath. You gave me 24 hours. I only needed 6 minutes. Trump turned toward the screen behind him. It suddenly flickered to satellite imagery, real-time surveillance of Burkina Faso's northern border. A convoy of armored vehicles, branded with U.S. Emergency Aid Corps, was already rolling in, escorted by African NGOs and UN observers. See, while you were counting hours, I was saving lives. While you threatened, I responded. I don't need to prove anything to a dictator who hijacked his own government with a gun and a camera. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "You wanted a message, Mr. Traoré? Here's mine. I don't blink. And the next time you look into a camera and try to threaten the United States, make sure you're not looking into your own political obituary." The screen cut to black. 6 minutes. No press conference, no follow-up. Just a message that rewrote the headlines around the world. Trump answers ultimatum with precision, strike of influence. Africa's youngest president just got schooled on live TV. 6 minutes trend overtakes Twitter. Even some of Traoré's supporters began to waver. Questions swirled. Did he miscalculate? Was he out of his depth? But one thing was now certain. The game wasn't over, and Trump had just made his first move. Across Burkina Faso, the night didn't bring peace. It brought silence, a different kind of silence. Heavy, uncomfortable, almost suffocating. In Ouagadougou's parliament chambers, ministers sat frozen in front of giant plasma screens, replaying Trump's 6-minute speech on loop. President Ibrahim Traoré leaned forward in his chair, jaw tight, knuckles clenched. His eyes flickered between the screen and the satellite images of American convoys that had already crossed regional borders under full humanitarian clearance. He'd meant to trap Trump. He'd planned to humiliate him on the global stage. But instead, Trump had flipped the narrative. Outside the Capitol, crowds gathered, not in protest, not in support. Just stunned curiosity. Phones lit up the streets, screens glowing with hashtags. Siare 6 minutes. Siare Trump did it again. Siare Burkina shock. On state media, a visibly shaken anchor tried to reframe the event. President Traoré's ultimatum was a strategic provocation meant to test American intent, she said. Trump's response was unexpected. Unexpected was an understatement. At a university in Ghana, a political science professor shook his head mid-lecture. That wasn't a speech, he told his class. That was dominance. Controlled, calculated, undebatable dominance. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., former Trump aide Stephen Miller appeared on Fox News, smiling like a man who saw it all coming. "This was never about Burkina Faso," he said. "This was about showing the world that Trump doesn't need to be in office to be in charge." Back in Burkina Faso, the military council urged Traoré to respond, but with caution. His advisors whispered different strategies: escalate, apologize, spin the story. But Traoré wasn't listening. He stood in the war room, watching footage of American personnel unloading food, medicine, and communications equipment near refugee zones in the north, areas his own government had ignored for weeks. Every second ticked like a hammer. His own people were sharing clips praising Trump. Even conservative African leaders were applauding the move. This wasn't just a loss. It was a shift in power, in narrative, in perception. Ibrahim Traoré had made one misstep. He gave Donald Trump a clock, and Trump turned it into a countdown, one that exploded across continents without a single bullet. Within hours of Trump's thunderous 6-minute reply, world leaders were scrambling, not just in West Africa, not just in Washington. Every major capital from Paris to Beijing was holding emergency briefings. The message hadn't been long, it hadn't been complicated, but it was a diplomatic earthquake. In Brussels, EU foreign policy advisors stared at one another in silence. Ursula von der Leyen's assistant whispered, "Did he just bypass every rule of engagement?" A younger aide replied, "No, he rewrote them." In Paris, Macron's team debated whether to issue a statement. "We can't appear to endorse this," someone said, "but if we criticize it, then we're siding with Traoré," another replied grimly. In Moscow, Putin watched the video in silence. The corner of his mouth twitched, perhaps amusement, perhaps concern. "He's back," was all he muttered to his chief of staff. In Beijing, Xi Jinping demanded a report from their African division. "Why did we not see this coming?" he snapped. No one answered. What could they say? Trump had acted alone, outside of every channel, and yet he won the room, the continent, the internet. Social media detonated. Trump shock, global reset. Africa heard him. Commentators debated not the ethics, but the effectiveness. Trump hadn't waited for a debate. He hadn't argued at the UN. He didn't tweet. He delivered, visibly, relentlessly, and more dangerously for world leaders. The people noticed. From Nairobi to Nashville, from Lagos to Los Angeles, everyday citizens were quoting his lines. You had 24 hours. I needed 6 minutes. It was on t-shirts. It was on billboards. And for the first time in years, even his critics admitted, this felt presidential. Back in Burkina Faso, Traoré stood isolated. His foreign ministry received over 38 formal statements from other African nations, some cautiously neutral, some quietly supportive of Trump's action. And his own intelligence chief delivered a final blow. Sir, we've intercepted internal messaging in Mali and Chad. Their populations are demanding their leaders invite Trump. Traoré turned to his advisors and whispered, We've lost control of the narrative. One of them asked carefully, Do we respond? The president said nothing, only stared at the American convoy's live feed, helping his people better than he ever had. By nightfall, Ibrahim Traoré was no longer calculating. He was scrambling. The cameras, the attention, the confidence he had exuded just 24 hours earlier, all of it was gone. Now, inside a dimly lit war room beneath the presidential palace in Ouagadougou, Traoré's voice echoed with urgency. Block the Americans from delivering another shipment. An aide hesitated. Sir, the villagers are surrounding the convoy. To thank them, Traoré slammed his fist down, then removed the villagers. But, sir, it's being live-streamed by independent journalists, and our own soldiers are clapping with them. Silence. Cold. Humiliating. The power dynamic had flipped. A former U.S. president had rolled in unannounced, bypassed every diplomatic convention, and earned the loyalty of Traoré's people. Not with words, but with clean water, food, and mobile medical units. Worse, Trump had footed the bill himself, publicly. No NGOs, no strings, this is from the American people, he had said into a mic, flanked by smiling children holding small U.S. flags. It was not politics, it was optics mastery. So Traoré made his final move. He went live. A surprise national broadcast. Dressed in military fatigues, standing stiffly behind a podium, he called Trump's arrival a violation of national dignity and demanded the convoys leave Burkina Faso within 48 hours. But even before the speech ended, the comment section turned brutal. We haven't had water in 3 months. Now we do. Thanks, Trump. Traoré's ego is bigger than his empathy. Shame. Let Trump work. At least he did something. And as the feed cut, Traoré turned to his press secretary and asked the only question that mattered. Did we gain any ground? The reply was quiet. No, sir. If anything, we lost more. In Washington, even Trump's rivals, Democrats, independents, moderates, were stunned. He'd upended global diplomacy by doing the one thing no one else dared, acting immediately and visibly without protocol. And people around the world were watching and comparing Traoré's military speech versus Trump's footage hugging a crying mother whose son had been sick for months. There was no contest. He lost the crowd, he lost the stage, he lost the game, and he knew it. By dawn, Ibrahim Traoré sat alone. No aides, no advisors, no cameras. Just a burned-out phone screen and the lingering echoes of his failed broadcast. But as the desert sun cracked through the window, his secure line lit up, unknown, Washington, D.C. He hesitated, then answered. A familiar voice, calm, confident, distinctly American, cut through the static. I gave you 24 hours. You wasted them. It was Trump. Traoré stiffened. You trespassed. I walked in through the front door. Your people opened it for me. Silence. You want a power game? Let's play. Trump laid it out, not with threats, but with receipts. Satellite footage of Trump's teams being cheered across the Sahel. A leaked memo from Traoré's own military expressing support for U.S. operations. A list of 10 African nations offering to host Trump's humanitarian program if Burkina Faso declined. And finally, a whisper that felt like thunder. Next week I'll be back. But not just with food, with 3 African leaders standing beside me, and international media rolling live. What'll you have? A speech or a legacy? That's when it hit Traoré. This wasn't about Trump the politician anymore. It was Trump as a force, one who didn't wait for permission and who weaponized goodwill like a precision missile. He wasn't trying to invade. He was becoming indispensable. And Traoré? He was becoming a footnote. For the first time in weeks, the young revolutionary felt something cold creeping in, irrelevance. Meanwhile, in the U.S., the story was exploding. CNN. Trump delivers aid, forces African leader into corner. Fox. Trump's Africa gambit leaves global elites in shock. TikTok and X. Filled with clips of Trump being mobbed by grateful villagers, his message going viral. We're not here for politics. We're here to help. Polls shifted. Commentators whispered the unthinkable. Was Trump's return already happening? The Rose Garden was packed. Cameras lined the hedges. Journalists elbowed for space. Drones hummed quietly above the White House lawn. At exactly 3 p.m., Donald Trump stepped up to the podium. A blue suit, a red tie, and a smirk that said everything was going according to plan. He didn't need to wait for silence. The crowd was already breathless. Some people, he began, think leading means giving orders. I think it means showing up and bringing food, laughter, but also applause. A rare mix of charm and force. Behind him, the flags of 3 African nations flapped in the breeze, Ghana, Senegal, and Rwanda, their presidents standing proudly beside Trump. And then came the moment no one expected. He pulled out a small letter, unfolded it slowly, and held it up. This, Trump said, was sent to me this morning by Burkina Faso's military council, not from their president, from his own generals. They said, "Thank you, come back anytime." The press gasped. So to Ibrahim Traoré, I say this, no hard feelings, but leadership means listening to your people. He leaned forward, and they've already spoken. As reporters scrambled to tweet, Trump turned to the African leaders beside him. We're not just delivering aid, we're building clinics, clean water systems, trade agreements that actually help people. He waved to the side. A live feed popped up on the big screen. Villagers in Burkina Faso waving handmade "Thank you Trump" signs, women dancing, children holding American flags. It wasn't optics, it was momentum. One journalist from the BBC leaned over to her colleague and whispered, "He's rewriting the playbook again." Within the hour, MSNBC, Trump scores diplomatic coup without state debt. Al Jazeera, U.S. returns to Africa, but this time, it's Trump leading the charge. X trends. Trump in Africa, global shift, Traoré cornered. And in Ouagadougou, Traoré stood alone at his press lectern. No crowd, no support, just a prepared statement that already felt like history. The world wasn't just watching Trump anymore, they were following him. It wasn't just the U.S. or Africa anymore. The Trump-Traoré showdown had gone global, igniting headlines in every major language. From Tokyo to Berlin, Sydney to Sao Paulo, one question dominated the conversation. Did Trump just outmaneuver a military regime without firing a single shot? In the Kremlin, Putin watched the footage in silence, sipping black tea. His advisor leaned in. This move, it wasn't just for show. Putin nodded slowly. It was power, dressed in diplomacy. In Brussels, the EU Commission scrambled to schedule a joint summit with African leaders, desperate not to be left behind. In Beijing, Xi Jinping ordered a review of all current African infrastructure deals. If Trump builds trust, we'll lose leverage. Even Macron, who once mocked Trump, tweeted out a begrudging salute. Effective diplomacy, regardless of politics, should be recognized. The people come first. But perhaps the most unexpected response came from inside Africa itself. In Burkina Faso, students rallied peacefully outside government buildings. Their signs said, "We want leadership, not ego. Listen to us, not just your pride." And perhaps most damning, America acted. Our government postured. Back in Washington, Caroline Leavitt held a press conference. Reporters leaned in, expecting standard talking points. Instead, she dropped a bombshell. President Trump is organizing a Pan-African Leadership Summit next month. Not with elites, with educators, healthcare workers, and community leaders. That's who we're listening to now. Gasps, followed by applause, even among press. And when asked if Traoré would be invited, Caroline smiled. If he can listen more than he speaks, maybe. The clip went viral. It wasn't just a comeback. It was a redefinition of American diplomacy. Swift, unorthodox, and unmistakably Trump. Traoré's 24-hour ultimatum had turned into a 24-hour masterclass in leadership reversal, and the clock was still ticking. Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, presidential compound, 6:57 p.m. Ibrahim Traoré sat in his war room, the thick velvet curtains drawn tight. The room was filled with tension, not the kind born from strength, but from loss of grip. His inner circle stood frozen as his top intelligence advisor placed a file on the polished mahogany table. "We've lost 3 major tribal coalitions. Overnight. They're aligning with civic groups that support the Trump initiative." Traoré's jaw clenched. "That's impossible. The youth are loyal. The media isn't buying your narrative anymore," the advisor cut in. "You gave Trump 24 hours. He gave the continent hope." Meanwhile, Trump's humanitarian envoy, backed by private tech, agriculture, and health sector giants, had already landed in Accra and Nairobi. Their mission? Deploy instant impact infrastructure: water, broadband, emergency medical shelters. The message was clear. America's not here for talks. We're here to act. And it was working. Social media exploded. Young Africans stitched together videos of Trump's swift response, overlaying them with remixed Fela Kuti beats and hashtags like "Trump moves Africa," "Traoré took Thel," "We choose results." The shift wasn't just political. It was generational. In a private call with his military command, Traoré slammed his fist on the desk. "I am not losing control to a man who speaks like a showman." One general, clearly shaken, replied carefully, "With respect, sir, he doesn't just speak. He delivers." Silence. Then Traoré turned to the window, watching the lights of the capital flicker. He was once the symbol of African resistance. Now, he was the one being resisted. As the sun set on Ouagadougou, a new truth dawned. Trump had not only answered Traoré's ultimatum, he'd broken the illusion of his dominance, and the final blow was still coming. New York City, live broadcast, FOX News, 8:03 p.m. EST. The studio lights dimmed. The American flag rippled behind the stage. The anchor's voice echoed. Tonight, former President Donald J. Trump responds directly to Ibrahim Traoré's 24-hour ultimatum, and what he says may change geopolitics forever. Trump, seated calmly in his signature Navy suit, leaned forward, the camera zooming in. "Let me be clear. I don't answer to threats. I answer with results." He held up a black folder. Inside, signed partnership deals, infrastructure, clean water, education, with 7 West African nations. None included Burkina Faso. "We gave you a chance, Traoré. You chose pride over people. Africa deserves better, and now they have it." Ouagadougou, presidential compound, simultaneously. Traoré watched the broadcast from his secured suite. The final image? Thousands of African youth marching through the streets of Dakar, Lagos, and Accra, holding signs that read, "Hope delivered, not promised. Trump came. Traoré played." Back in the U.S., the anchor read the breaking headline off the teleprompter. "Trump outsmarts African dictator in 24-hour showdown. World reacts." TikTok lit up. Clips of Trump's speech were set to dramatic orchestral beats. YouTube thumbnails screamed, "Traoré humiliated on global stage. Africa chooses Trump. Live." Traoré's own military council issued a quiet resignation that night. His communications director fled to Ghana. The once unshakable revolutionary was now surrounded by whispers. The man who tried to stand against the West just got outmaneuvered by it. Closing scene, Trump Tower, NYC. Trump walked out of the building, surrounded by cameras and supporters. A journalist called out, "Mr. Trump, any final words for Traoré?" Trump smirked. "Yeah, he said 24 hours. I only needed 12. He stepped into his armored SUV. The door shut. The convoy pulled away into the Manhattan night, a symbol not just of retaliation, but of dominance. Ibrahim Traoré gave Trump 24 hours. What Trump did left the world speechless. As the final headlines scroll across screens worldwide, one thing becomes undeniable. You can threaten a nation, you can challenge a man, but when that man is Donald J. Trump, you'd better be ready for the storm that follows. Ibrahim Traoré gave an ultimatum. Trump gave him a lesson in leadership and power and in what it means to truly serve your people. The world didn't just watch, the world witnessed history. Because in today's global battlefield, it's not who shouts loudest, it's who plays smartest. And once again, Trump played to win. This wasn't a press conference, it was a statement. And Traoré? He just became the footnote to someone else's victory. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more explosive political showdowns, epic comebacks, and truth-driven drama you won't find anywhere else. We'll see you next time. Because when power speaks, the world listens.